Hi everyone, I'm Agnes from Nextgen Professional, and today we're going to be talking with Shawna McKenzie Onita. She is from Career Foundations. She's going to be helping us navigate Ontario subsidies and grant programs, as well as some Canada-wide programs. So Shawna, I have you here now. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm well, excited to be here. Great to meet everybody, well, virtually as it is the norm now. So very excited to be a part of this. Thanks for the invitation, Agnes. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So I'm going to get into this. I try to keep these down to about 30, 45 minutes, and of course, questions and answers afterwards. So Shawna, can you please give a brief introduction to yourself, because you have quite the background in this field?
Oh, absolutely. So I actually have about 20 years in the staffing and recruitment industry in general, about 10 years within the Employment Ontario network. So as a employer services consultant since 2010, working with the Career Foundation after transitioning from the corporate recruitment world into the government kind of space with employment programs. So it's been an interesting journey, but I've always had great relationships with employers. Um, I consider myself to be an avid networker. I love bringing people together, sharing common goals, working on solutions together. A big picture thinker is not just about now, but it's about, now and the future. So I love getting different perspectives from different people. And then telling them about Employment Ontario programs. It is a really great resource for employers, so I really enjoy doing that. And a lot of employers don't even understand the support that's there for them. So that's one of the best part of my job is talking to an employer that, oh, I've not used Employment Ontario before. And I'm like, well, let me tell you what we do. So I really enjoy it. For me personally, why I focus on the trades, actually, honestly, ever since coming into Employment Ontario, it's always been this really great, I just gravitated to it. I actually did. So in 2010, the Employment Ontario Network did a whole transformation to a whole new way of doing employment services. So in 2010, I actually did one of the first apprenticeship placements in the network in Ontario, period. And it was just so exciting. And it was just because I just gravitated to that sector. So it's been a very incredible journey since then. So yeah, that's all about me. I'm here to help employers navigate the government employment programs, what's available, what they can access, and also help them with onboarding employees as well and accessing some of these resources so that when you're training, there's also support for training and onboarding new employees. So that's a
Can
little
you
bit about me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Career Foundations is like an affiliate, or what is Career Foundations to Employment Ontario? I get this question
Sure.
often, so I'd like to have people understand the relationship as to what Career Foundations is.
Sure. So through the Career Foundation, we are an employment service provider of the Employment Ontario program. So Employment Ontario is a program of the Ministry of Labor, Training and Skills Development. It is a ministry funded program, but the employment services programs, they outsource to individual nonprofit and charities. So we are a provider. So we are a part of their vendor, let's say. So we're a vendor to Ministry of Labor to deliver the employment program across the Greater Toronto area, as well as I would say maybe 2 hours each way. So from 2 hours east, north, south, and west, I would say that's our reach. But that's who we are. So we are a vendor of the Employment Ontario program. So we have the contract to provide this program to employers and job seekers. It is a program that is of no cost to both the job seekers and the employer because we are funded to do this program. So that's the connection. And it's the same along with other service providers as well. You may have heard of the, YMCA, COSTI, JVS, those other organizations. It's the same deal. So we are vendors of the program.
Absolutely. And I know, Linda, you just mentioned, did not know this existed. There's actually and I'm going to go through a screen share, in every province, there are multiple vendors who distribute and supply these services in different geographical locations, and they are either provincially or federally funded. So there's some great incentives there to just get in contact with somebody like a Shawna. I always go to Shawna because she's a guru. She just knows everything about subsidies. So you gotta find your Shawna where you are, and they have as much information as she does. But we're going to kind of get into the talk of these labor trades and of what's happening. So Shawna, where do you see the most shortages with your clients?
Clients, so I kind of have two clients. I have like the employers and I have the job seekers. So I would say the job seekers, it's funny because the shortage, how I kind of define the shortage is that everybody thinks there's 4 trades. There isn't 4 trades, there's over 150, right? So I find that the lack of exposure to amazing trades is one of the shortcomings of my job seekers. They come to me, I want to be an electrician, I want to be a plumber, I want to be an HVAC guy. And I'm just like, you know what, you are just limiting yourself. So I find that, you know, the shortage with the job seeker side is that there isn't enough awareness of all the other trades that are there in terms of the viability of the trades, the career pathing of the trades. So that's a huge opportunity for a lot of my trades employers. I have a trade guy that's in concrete forming, and I'm just like, I'm exposing him to all these different job seekers by giving him an opportunity to do info sessions. So, you know, I really think job seekers and people that are looking for viable careers, they really need to understand what a vast world the trades world is. So that's probably one of the biggest gaps there for my employers in terms of shortages. To be honest, I think everyone, mostly because you know, I don't think
that way.
well, yeah, and I just don't think a lot of them trades employers coming to that awareness piece, they haven't been focused too much on building the pipeline, because it's all these immediate hires and then need, you know, workers now. But as we're getting into the age where all these amazing trades professional guys are retiring, the thought process for building that pipeline probably wasn't there. So now there's all this huge shortage everywhere because of the pipeline issue. And that's kind of why I say it's everywhere. So I might be able to fill one person here or one person there, and I might put an ad out and I might get like 2 or 3 or 20 resumes, but that's just for the now. But for every person that's coming in now, you have 50 that's retiring, right? So I think the pipeline issue is really a problem, and I'm seeing my employers really kind of beginning to think about that way. It's not just my immediate need. How am I building my pipeline for the people that are going, as opposed to focusing on this one posting for this one guy that I need or this one girl that I need now? So that's kind of why I'd say the shortages is everywhere, because I think all my trades employers or all employers in trades really need to be a little bit more strategic on really building that pipeline and addressing that funnel and making sure it's full all the time.
Shawna, I couldn't agree more with you. When we're dealing with our clients over at Nextgen, you know, we do put an emphasis on, that's great that we need to fill immediate roles. There's obviously a fire that's burning that you need to immediately, you know, talk to it or have the conversation of, we need to hire a senior person or an intermediate. But there is so much value in investing in younger people or intermediate people and training them, and we call them homegrown, and you grow them into your own organization. And you know, there's so much value and loyalty, and you're training them your way, and they're eager and they want to do it and they want to do the job. We need to give younger people or more diverse people the space to become part of our industry. And I could go on and on about that, but I think that actually leads into our next question, which is, you know, what support will career foundations give to the candidates or give to the clients? So not just in the strategic sense, actually, no, let's talk about the strategic sense. On the candidate side and on the client side, what type of support do you give to your members?
Well, on the job seeker side, I think it's very important to give that exposure. Like I said, so someone coming in and say, I want to be an electrician. Well, why? Because that's the trade I know. Well, here's a catalog of other trades. So I think, so what we've been doing a lot in the past few years, we've been doing career exploration. We've been doing a day in the life of. So I partner with a specific private career college, and he actually allows some of my job seekers to come in and experience a class, and they run like about 10 different trade programs, right? So it's really cool to be able to do that. We've done walkthroughs in like training centers that have done like drywalling and that kind of stuff. So I think the immediate support is to just give exposure to these job seekers. Not that they, they shouldn't be electricians, but I think it's important to be well informed and understand everything else that's out there, and then you make a more informed decision, right? You may still land on that electrician opportunity, but now it's after some research, it's after some exploration of other things, right? So giving them that exposure, making sure I partner with the resources that they need. So, I don't tell the job seeker, go to a school and, let me come into your class for a day. They probably will say no, right? So making sure that I also build those connections and also build those resources and community partners that my clients can access is very important. Working with people like Agnes, that is a huge fan of education. That's a huge deal when it comes to job seekers. I think sometimes as an employer services consultant and working in employment services in general, we tend to just get them in that job right away, and this is what you need. But the education piece and taking the time to actually go through that exploration with them is very important. So the support I would say I would offer is that make sure I am a bucket of resources for them. I am that kind of one-stop shop, whether it's training, whether it's info session, whether it's in an employer informational interview. So making sure that I skill up my network just to make sure that my job seekers can access it when they're ready. For the employers, the support that we offer is the same thing, but on the other side. So giving them that exposure to make sure that they can do awareness, that they can do exposure of their trade to job seekers, help them finding those candidates that have those foundational skills. We also build pre-apprenticeship programs, and we do joint government grant proposals with employers for their specific trade. So we've done pre-apprenticeship programs in carpentry and arboriculture. The Career Foundation has actually won an award from the Arboriculture Association for introducing and training the most female into the arboriculture industry, and that was a global award, so that was very exciting. So these are pre-apprenticeship programs. They're funded by Ministry of Labor, but they're in partnership with an employer for a specific trade. So having the employers kind of be on these grant proposals with us is really good. We're doing another one for concrete forming with a major organization that they're doing a joint, it's a sector specific joint proposal that we're doing with the employer as like a joint team member. So for the employers, having them not just access the transactional side of what I do, which is providing candidates, but the strategic side, doing grant proposal, helping you to build that pipeline, creating targeted specific programs for your trade. That's like a boot camp, So we're in the middle of actually trying to do another proposal for cabinet making. Because we're having a lot of employers are having a hard time, so we are doing this research with employers, if we were to run a 6-week program, can someone green come into that 6-week program and learn the fundamentals of being a cabinet maker, and that person now can be hired by your company to continue on that career path. So it's not 6 years, it's 6 weeks of foundational training with input and curriculum being provided by the employer. So it's getting my employers involved in what we're doing with the job seekers. That's the type of support, and that's the relational side of things. So I think it's very important to go beyond just here's a resume, and to be more of a partner with my employer and to help them address that issue, that pipeline issue. So we're really having a focus on that. going forward. We also have what's called a advisory board and an advisory working group. So we invite employers that are from the same industry or from the same sector, and we invite them to tell us what the challenges are. And from this data, we then go to the ministry and say, this is an industry problem. This is how we feel we can address it. We need money to do it, right? So
Absolutely. That's always the ticket,
we
right?
need money, right? So taking that information. So our employers are very involved. So for example, the advisory board committee we have employers from the trade sector, the hospitality sector, financial services sector, technology sector, and it's all about workforce development. And within the advisory board, we have the working groups, right? So, and from our employers, these are commitments of 4 or 5 meetings a year. But the data and the different training programs and opportunities that come from just those collaboration efforts is amazing, and it's only going to benefit our employers down the road. So I think it's very
Absolutely.
important. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it's very important that at least our organization and me specifically, I really try to get beyond that transactional and be a resource for my employer now and for the future. So I would say that's the support that you can rely on from the Career Foundation, really, to help our employer. So yes, it's the immediate, and yes, I can pre-screen candidates and I can take your job posting and I can offer you wage subsidy, which I'm sure Agnes and I are going to get into. But it's how else can I support you so it's not always this immediate challenge of I need a person yesterday, but I have this funnel of people that I just need to screen, do a quick screen and say, okay, you're starting in a couple weeks, right? So
Yeah,
those are some of
and
the
I
supports.
think it's really interesting because you and I basically do a very similar job. I do a lot of
Mhm.
outreach, we build a lot of programs, and we're both working toward the betterment of the community, which is this construction industry, which in my opinion is a bit of a dinosaur in terms of how they've worked with candidates and placements and how they've done recruitment. We're trying to create a new strategy because there's a huge pain in the industry, and it's skilled and technical professionals there's just no more left of them for people to keep pulling from this pool of candidates. And it's across Canada. Actually, I would say it's across North America at this point. We've had
Yeah,
companies from the US reaching out to
yeah,
us.
for sure.
And I think you're absolutely correct. We need to let people know that there are strategic companies such as yours and mine that will work on the pipeline. The immediate need is always going to be there. It's going to be there 10, 20, 30 years from now. But what does that pipeline look like? So we're not doing the immediate, put out the fires 10 times a year. We're doing it once a year, twice a year, because that's the need now, right? So it's about the strategic planning. And I think that there's great support from companies like yours and mine. So this is exactly why I wanted to do this call, because you're right. You're not just a resume seeker. You're not just somebody who's going to give someone money, although that does help. But what are we going to do to plan this together so that this isn't going to be an issue later on down the line? And actually, that kind of goes into my next question, which I know a lot of people are looking for these subsidies. 2020 kicked everyone's butt. I don't think it hasn't affected anybody. I mean, everyone's got some sort of piece or component that financially they've been touched by this. And so I want to draw on, you and I have this conversation quite a bit. You've reached out and have been in contact with some of my clients. There are these different subsidies that the government has or is giving away, and there's access to this money. And it's really interesting. It blows my mind how many HR professionals we work with or hiring managers we work with who don't actually know that this exists, who don't actually know that they could reach out to the government. And even if they just tried, I mean, it might be $2,000, it might be, $30,000, $40,000. They don't even know where to go or where to try. So what type of subsidies, if we can get right into it, what type of subsidies do you have that you think would benefit our community?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm going to start with the training incentive, hiring incentive, mostly because that is the most common one across all service providers. So as I mentioned before, in Employment Ontario, we have hundreds and hundreds of service providers across Ontario, and we're all given a budget from Ministry of Labor for this training incentive. placements. So the training incentive is used for the initial onboarding of a new employee. So it's there to reimburse some of those costs that an employer realizes when they're hiring someone. There's more time that's taken to train them. There's more time that's taken from another employee for job shadowing, for training. There's equipment costs, purchasing sometimes of computers. Now with COVID, there's purchasing of PPE. So the training incentive is used to help employers offset some of those initial costs of hiring and training somebody. Now, it is supposed to impact the community. So in terms of the job seeker community, it is supposed to go towards, job seekers that probably need a little bit more of support, a little bit more of investment from that employer. Not that they can't do the job or they don't have the experience, but maybe they're a newcomer to Canada. Maybe they have been out of the workforce for like 6 months or so because life happened or whatever. So the hire, there needs to be some demonstrated employment kind of challenge that employer is willing to support because the potential is there. And to be honest, some of my employers these days, they're like, are they going to show up for work? They're like, yes. I'm like, okay, they're hired. I'll train them, right? So so just even just employers that and the trade sector is one that's really great for that. They just want that work ethic, they want that drive, they want that personal motivation, and they'll train for the skill. So that's what the training incentive is used for. It's typically a reimbursement that can be up to 80% of that new hire's wage back to the employer for about a 12-week period. Typically, I do 3 months because that is the standard universal probation. Some employers have more for sure. And I do think it's a good amount of time for that employer and that employee to know if things are going to work out. So it could be, like I said, anywhere up to 80%. Typically, it's never less than 50%. So if you're eligible to access the training incentive program for a new hire, you can realize on average about 75% of their wages reimbursed back to you in that 12-week period. So again, that is meant to offset. Yeah.
I just, Linda, it did ask a question. It's very relevant, I think, to the conversation right now. Typically, I wait to the end, but this one's quite relevant. Sure. So she's asking about incentives. So she hires people on contract throughout the year at different and specific times. So the contract could be 6 months, contract could be a year. Would that person still qualify for a training incentive?
Yeah, that person will still qualify for the training incentive. The only thing we don't want is for the contract to be less than the actual training incentive period itself, right? So normally it's about 3 months. So it would be good if it's like the contract is 4 months or more, because you know what, even though it's contract with that employer, you're investing in that job seeker, and that job seeker, even if the contract is not renewed, that job seeker's employability goes up. Right. And our higher purpose, our CEO, that's what she says all the time, our higher purpose is sustainable employment. Right. So if that is the nature of the business, but my contract employer gives so much training and so much skills to this job seeker, then absolutely. So that's the only requirement I would say, is that it's just not less than 3 months. But absolutely, they will still qualify for that training incentive.
There you go, Linda. That's great. Thank you. I actually didn't know that myself. So that actually helps because we do sometimes some contract roles, and that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the only other caveat I should mention that is that even though they're in contract, they can be an independent contractor. So they can be self-employed and invoicing you. So I think that's very different. So the contract could be, short term, but during that short term contract, they're still an employee of the employer. They can be a self-employed independent contractor that's just providing services, and that is invoicing the company. Then that would not be suited. That would not qualify for the training incentive.
I think that's fair, though. I think that's fair. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And then what about some other subsidies? So we talked about the training incentive, which is amazing because I love it. It's community-based. It's ensuring sustainable employment. I love that incentive. And I think it's anywhere between $2,000 to $6,000 per
Yep,
person that you
$2,000
get.
to $6,000 per person. And if you actually sign up an apprentice, so you formally register someone as an apprentice, you get an additional $1,000 on top of that at the time of sponsoring that person. And if that person is with you for 6 months, you get a retention bonus, which is another $1,000. So it could potentially be up to $8,000, right?
Look at all this money, people.
Yeah, no, for sure. So it's for my employers that you know w- I think the hardest part of my job, and everybody's gonna laugh when I took this job, because I came from the corporate world, right? So, and I did agency work, right? So I was contacting employers. I'm like, this is what we're doing, and it's mostly senior level positions, most of the ones that Agnes focus on, but in finance and accounting, so totally different sector. So coming into employment services and having this budget that I need to use with employers, I think the hardest part of my job was telling my employers that this is available to them. Like, it was the most like strange thing, like, because they would think there's like, watch the catch, and are they going to come for my firstborn, and you know what I mean? So it was just the hardest part of my job, and I'm like, no. So I would be like, Agnes, just try one time, you will see. So it just became
I
this
just want to
running
give you
joke.
money.
Yeah. And then you do get the employers that say, so you're telling me you're going to give me money to hire someone that's unqualified. I'm like, no, and that's not what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you that there's money available for you to train the right person who has the right potential. That's a totally different conversation. So it is a very, very accessible program for the employers, as long as they know what the purpose of the training incentive is. A lot of my employers jump on board. There is no cap, by the way, as to how many incentives you can access per year, as long as the funding is there. I mean, once the budget is depleted, we are getting towards the end of the budget because our funding year from the government is April to March. But then the budget starts again in April.
And
Right.
just so everyone knows,
Yeah.
and Shawna, you can probably confirm this, agencies and government funding of this type, if people aren't accessing it, then the government takes that as sort of no one needs it. And so, agencies might not get the training incentive back the following year. That's how all funding is. If no one is tapping into funding programs, it's a use it or lose it type program. So we are actively pushing people towards Shawna and towards the other grants that we're going to be talking about in a second, because if we're not plugging into these systems and showing the government we actually do need or want these financed areas, they're going to get rid of it's going to go somewhere else. So you might as well take it. You might as well have this opportunity to help yourselves. Again, 2020 kicked everyone's butt. You might as well finance. If you need the hires, finance the hires through the government with no strings attached, much like Shawna said.
Yeah.
So that being said, can you talk a little bit about the Canada, the Canada Ontario job grants?
Yep.
I do also have the Alberta and the BC job grants up because it does run across Canada. Some provinces have it. So I'll show everyone those links on a screen share. But if you could talk about the Canada Ontario job grants.
For sure. So the Canada Ontario job grant. So the training incentive, and I just want to say the major difference. So the training incentive is to assist you with a new employee that's brand new to the organization, and you're hiring them and you're onboarding them. The Canada Ontario job grant is to assist you train and scale up your existing employees. So these are people that are already working with you, already on your payroll, that you are now doing some training and development with. It's up to 80% of reimbursement if you're doing a first-time application of that training cost. And it has to be done by an external service provider. So this is not internal training and development. This is not cross training. So this is outsourcing to, a trainer like Agnes and Nextgen that have an amazing mentorship and leadership program that I'm just going to refer everybody to. So it's used to train your existing people, skill them up, give them new skills, in order to have them do their job better and also, hopefully move up in the company and move up in their career path. So that's the major difference with the training incentive program and the COJG. COJG is for your existing staff. So for that application, like I said, it is up to 80% reimbursement, but it's up to a maximum of $10,000 per employee. And again, there is no cap. So the only cap is that if you're training 21 people or less, a service provider like the Career Foundation is able to do the application, process the application, and approve the application. If you're training 21 people or more, that application goes directly to the Ministry of Labor and they handle that application. So that's the difference between who actually administers that particular training. For the first time application is up to 80%, but then if you're accessing the grant again for a second time or third or fourth time, it does drop to 50%. But again, it's up to $10,000 per an employee, right? So if you have some great people in your organization, some great employees that have the potential to be the next leaders, I definitely, honestly, investing in employees and building leadership in your company cannot be more important now than ever. It's not necessarily grabbing a leader from another company or another competitor. Is investing that person that has shown you loyalty, that has been there for you through thick and thin, and they show that ability. You get someone like Agnes and you get Nextgen in there, you put their leadership skills, you make it formal, and you have another employee for another 20 years. I cannot tell you how important it is when I see my employers investing in their own people. Their retention percentage just goes way down. They have little to no turnover, right? So investing in your people, skilling them up is so important. And the government, realized that as well, because the retention is always a constant issue from employers from all sectors. And one of the biggest retention programs that you can do to make sure you keep your good people is investing in them. Is definitely investing in them.
And Shawna, we got another good question here. I'm under the impression that it's any third-party agency, or does it have to be a Canadian third-party agency?
I do believe, so it depends if it's in person or online, because I do know you are able to do online training. It could be a training that's completely online, which I do think the training provider can be anyone. When it's in-person training, I think that becomes a little bit more of a challenge, where they may ask you to find a training provider that's more local. That's the only thing I can think of it being a difference, whether it is a specific training provider where you can actually go to their training site, or if it's virtual. I have seen training applications get approved from in IT, let's say, from companies in the States, right? So again, it really depends on what platform, what means that training is happening.
And I would say if we can keep it local, let's try to keep it local, only because of what's happening here this last year. That's my only caveat, is if we can keep it local, let's try.
For sure. And honestly, there are universal rules. So there's standard rules that they would want employers to put in their application, but there's always a rationale. So for example, if it's a specific training, like in manufacturing, sometimes food manufacturing, sometimes I've seen, that the training is so specific. There's only like 2 in the world. Right? So there is a place to put a rationale in your training application as to why you're going with that training provider, because you do need to make sure you provide quotes as well from about 3 different training providers. And if you're not able to get that quote, you do need to make sure you give a good rationale as to why you need to go with this training provider. So applications always have their standard set of rules and policies or whatever. But with employers and with the unique needs of employers, there is always an opportunity to put a rationale there and have your specific situation being looked at very differently out of the norm.
Thank you, Shawna. That's great. Are there any other programs that you wanted to discuss today with anybody? Otherwise, I will go to the screen share, because I will show individuals the different sites. But is there anything else that you
Well,
wanted to share?
there was some, maybe we can go through some of the chats. There was some that was popping up, some questions that I don't think we've
Yeah.
answered.
So just so everyone knows, I'm going to share Shauna's contact information with you. I will also share the individual who works with Shawna for the Canadian Job Grants, because again, if it's over 20 people that you're putting through the program, they will have to handle it. That being said, I'm going to go through some of these questions here. There's quite a few. Are there any grant proposals to support those that are in the aging place sector, in home modifications, or in accessibility sectors?
So the closest one I can think of, we do the Career Foundation and Employment Ontario in general, they do have disability or persons with disabilities specific programs. So a part of that program is they do have a budget that if an employer hires that particular participant from that program and they need to provide accommodation for that employee, such as equipment or software or whatever the case is, there is a budget that the employer can access to actually get those accommodations in place. I hope I'm answering your question, but
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be tied to the hire of that particular person and the accommodations that they need from that employer. There is funding there to assist that employer incur with some of those costs.
For sure. And again, I will be sharing the sites with you ladies, just so you can see, as well as everyone else who's going to see this later on. We will be showing the sites. And then third party, we talked about that. Are there grants for summer marketing staff for risk assessment? There is actually, it's not necessarily pandemic planning or risk assessment, but there actually are like summer students grants that you can apply for, and there's like co-op grants that you can apply for. So Employment Ontario does have specific like student body specific grants that you can apply for.
Yeah, so the Canada Summer Jobs is one of them, and that is delivered directly by Service Canada. So if you are interested in Canada Summer Job, that's really hard to say. It's best to get your application in now, to be honest, because it's funny, but they actually make decisions by like April. So months before summer starts. So it's really pretty much just Googling Canada Summer Jobs Program, registering yourself and making sure you can get your application in even from now. I've had employers that put application in from like October because they do approve these fairly quickly, way before the summer actually starts.
Yeah, that's what I noticed as well when we were kind of doing some research on these subsidies and grants, because we do a lot of post-secondary work. It was like you had to get there. It's so deadline driven, so deadline specific. Yeah.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
When I went on the website, there were no deadline. No, it said it was closed from last year still.
So they probably maybe haven't opened it up yet. So, but I would keep a close eye on it because that window is not long at all, Laura. It really isn't long. So keep a close eye on it and then just make sure. I would probably honestly, now that we're getting into December, go on it every once a week or so that when it opens up again, you just away you go.
Okay, sorry for interrupting.
No problem.
No problem. We had another question about if owners of a company can be covered in the cost of training. I'm under the impression that's a no. I think that the Canada Job Grants Program is looking for individuals who can either be promoted or given a wage increase due to their training, right? That's kind
for
of
sure. It's the highest they go is manager. That's the highest they go because they do want to see, they call it an impact of the training, and the government has kind of give some predetermined versions of what they consider impact. So Agnes is absolutely right. One of the impacts they look for, a few of the impacts they look for is promotion into a new position or just higher level of responsibilities, even if the title hasn't changed. Increase in wage is a good one. It doesn't have to be 15%, just any kind of compensation that's tied to that new skill that worker has. So you do need to show that there has been some impact to this person because of the training.
If you are an owner or if you are somebody who is looking to do training program, I mean, I'm an owner of a company. I write it off that it is part of the process of being an owner. So I mean, that's the only real area that I can see you can get some maybe tax back on that. But that's typically what we would do if we went through any training or any educational programs, is we would write it off as a corporate expense. Perfect. It doesn't look like we have any other questions.
Okay.
So just so everyone knows, Nextgen is working with Employment Ontario. We are also going to be reaching out to the Shawnas of other provinces. So hopefully we'll have pretty much every province I've noticed when I've been doing my own research has something similar. It might not be the Ontario version. It might not be the training incentive wage subsidies. It's just something different. So I'm going to really quickly go into a screen share. And I just want to show you some of the websites that we've been pulling. So this is a website that I've navigated a number of times. This is the Alberta. So Laura, you're shaking your head. You've probably been on this a number of times. I was guided to specifically this section right here. So I'll go to that. It's called the Employment Training and Career Services Directory. So this part of the job page is really where you're going to be finding the contacts that you need. So if you go into it, and I think I'm doing this correctly, I've only done it 1,000 times. Nope, that's not it. I just had it up here. I need the directory. There you go.
Yeah, I think you're on the directory actually. So what happens is the same thing for the Employment Ontario site. They break it down by the type of services you need in employment. So I think you were actually there, Agnes, when you saw like immigrant services and stuff, because they actually break it down as to the type of training that you need or the type of employment that you need. So if you scroll down,
there's this version, and then there's also the version I was just on, which this is geographically based.
Oh,
so
okay.
for instance, Laura, I think you said Calgary. So if you're in Calgary, it's really interesting how they've done their website. So it gives you the contact information of who you need to call, and then it tells you the programs they specialize in. So this one specializes in tech skills to employment programs. Then you've got the Catholic Immigration Society. They have a specialization in millwright and machinist pre-employment. So it depends on where you're looking, and they're really helpful to direct you to the next person that they think is the best suit for you. So if you go to higher landing and transition to employment services isn't exactly the training you're looking for, they might be able to refer you over to the actual affiliate that best represents the incentive or the training or the grants that you need access to. So I've actually navigated a number of these different companies and found in the geographical area, they're very helpful. So this is supply chain, this is career and employment. Like it's just, there's so much information to go through. And some of the larger ones like Manpower Services, they actually have full encompassing, like this one has all women in trades, and they work specifically on training all women. Like it's a great website to navigate. And this is where I was directed at least. And then there's also the, I don't know, there's also, okay, so this is the CAJG, which is the Canada Alberta Job Grant. So this is the job grant that Shawna was just talking about in relation to increasing existing skill sets within your organization. So it is almost the exact same fund, just for Alberta, and it's the same eligibility. You can actually download the guide here, which will work through, and then you can contact the provider that it'll send you to a provider, and that individual will be able to help you with the application process, which I'm pretty sure the application process is a little tedious, but it's worth it. You're going to get it in the end, so it's worth it. But this is the website for that. So I will be putting these websites in the text box so you do have access to them. And when we do this as a YouTube video for everyone watching, it's going to be right at the very end. I'm going to have the links open and I'll have it in the YouTube description. Ontario, so Employment Ontario has their Canada Ontario job grant up here as well. But again, I'm going to be giving you Shawna's information, so you can talk to her, you can talk to her staff. They will have access to all of this. And then these are the various funding programs for BC. So if you're in BC and you're looking at this, they also have loan, grant, and funding. All the websites are different, but there are incentives for hiring and different community benefit programs throughout all the provinces, I'm assuming. This is BC's version of it. And then BC also has the BC Employer Training Grant, which is a very similar grant to the Job Grant Ontario. This is just their version of it. So this is how their website looks. So that we will share with everyone so you have access to multiple provinces should you require it. Perfect. Was there any other questions that anyone had here? Shawna, yes. Hi, Linda. Hi.
Hi, I was going to type it, but okay, so I'm just not 100% clear on the difference between what you do and what Shawna does. Do I reach to Shawna? Do I reach to you if I want more information, need help? Moving this
I
forward?
don't actually have access to the funds. So Nextgen Professional is a construction, architectural, and engineering recruitment firm and training firm. So we have no access. We are not a distributor or a vendor to Employment Ontario. We specifically work on jobs within this sector, which is actually how I met Shawna at last year's trade show for the building show. We've actually just combined forces and decided to partner because we are really in line with the idea of promoting the industry, getting more jobs into the industry, getting more people into the industry to be trained. I have one piece of the puzzle, Shawna has the other piece of the puzzle. So together, you know, we're really just working together to get as many people, the subsidies, the wages, so they can keep employing the people that I'm putting through the door.
Gotcha. So when I work predominantly in the residential sector, so interior designers, architects, builders, designers, but I'm a resource focused on aging in place, living in place, wellness in the home. So they're all looking for, you know, there's many of those companies are looking to train their employees on that sector so that they can pick up more projects and jobs in that sector or deal with it. And so for instance, CSA and the Canadian Housing and Mortgage Corporation are putting together a new committee for accessible standards in housing. And then we're going to need to find people that can, you know, implement that. So I'm thinking maybe both of you would be a great resource for me.
Absolutely. We're more than open.
Like, Agnes, do you work in residential or are you strictly commercial?
Nope. We do all facets of construction. I mean, everything from heavy civil consultants, architects, developers. We work with the owners when they're planning, and it's everything from low rise, mid rise, high rise, all the way through to bridges. You know, sewer, water main is a big area for us, and then on top of it, high rise. We're in the GTA
multi-unit. Yeah, so the residential multi-unit. Okay, now that's clear for me. I know. Okay.
We basically do everything because we'll have clients who come to us and they're like, look, we're a GC. We specialize in high rise, but we also have an ICI design build sector.
Yeah, but you don't do residential. Yeah. You don't do residential, meaning Part 9 of the Ontario Building Code. So you're not like a single family or anything like that.
No,
You're
not true. We do that as well. We do that as well.
Okay, so
I
that's
work with architects who are low rise. I work with interior design firms, and we've worked with builders who are custom house builders, custom home builders, as well as builders that are subdivision builders. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for letting me take so much time, and definitely need to connect with both of you on this.
Yeah, no, please. This is what this is about. Oh, Shawna, you're on mute.
Sorry. No, I was just saying that's a very exciting project, Linda. Just thinking about that particular concept and wellness in the home, that's super exciting. I would just love to hear more about that period. As I you know, I have aging parents, and I know I'm going to be the main caregiver. You know, these are things we need to talk about so that, you know, they're at home and they're comfortable and they have everything they need right at their fingertips. So that's very exciting to hear. Very exciting to hear.
Yeah. Oh, Linda, you're on mute too.
I had to go to the United States, to the National Home Building Associations, to bring the training up to Canada. And I've been doing this since 2013. And I just launched a conference, which was supposed to be Canadian centric, and it ended up being global because of being on virtual. But it is all about, how are we addressing our built environment, whether it is the low-rise single family up to the multi-units, to retirement homes, to multi-generational. Laura mentioned something in a private chat to me. Multi-generational is really growing. And so we have a massive housing crisis in Canada, and we don't have the skilled labor. So we need more and more of that, because every day 1,000 people are turning 65 in Canada, and will for the next 10, maybe even 15 years. So we're losing so many of the trades. And then Health Canada was very interested, because how do we, if we redesign our homes so that people can stay in them longer, or they adapt to you as you change, like your parents, Shawna, can we prematurely keep them out of, those big retirement homes, long-term care facilities, out of the hospitals? Like, how do we get them to recover at home? So that whole wellness. So it's a really big sector, but our biggest barrier is the lack of knowledge for the trades. So the conference, Livable Environment, was to bring people like yourselves and others to help educate the businesses out there that are in the trades, architects, interior designers, the firms, the builders, developers, on what they need to do and how do they connect with people to really address this growing issue. And it's
definitely connect with us offline. I think this is a wonderful idea. I think you're absolutely correct. We are integrating houses. I think it's a really interesting where a lot of our builders are jumping on this retirement home bandwagon. And I'm like, what bandwagon? We knew about this for the last 20 years. It's not like we didn't know they were going to age. Like, I'm turning a year older next year, it's just simple math, but I get pretty upset when it's like, oh my God, we have this crisis. And I'm like, but we knew this was coming. That being said, if there's, much to what Shawna was saying about all these incentives and these programs and this training grants, if there's training that needs to happen for these builders, and they're like, look, we don't want to put out the money to train on, we just don't, or we don't have the money to put out, then even taking this information and saying, hey, builder A, B, and C, if you put 15 people through this training course, I'm going to be able to get you 80%, up to 80% back on this training, because it's really needed and the money's there. That's an incredible, powerful resource.
Well, I actually have been doing it. The problem is I never did a deep dive to really listen to Shawna and yourself to really understand this. So we have had this training program for the National Association of Home Builders in the States. I have been hosting a trainer to come to Canada, and a couple of companies have jumped onto this over the years. This training grant, I guess, has been around for a bit, and they have successfully done it. But when people ask me the question, I say, just go to Jobs Ontario grant and find it yourself. And then they get frustrated and can't find it. So I just need a relationship with a company like or like an individual like you, Shawna, or you, Agnes, that says this company will handle the application, or these people will guide you, or I have to learn it better so I can answer all the questions, because they have been doing it, not to the degree that they should be. So
sorry, I'm currently in the exact same situation you are, where we have an internal promotion or internal program. It's a leadership training program. We are an approved third-party provider. And it's not enough to just say, hey, sign up for our program. This is how much it's going to cost. By the way, you're going to get money back. We sell our program by saying, this is going to be a program. We know you want to be included in it, the leadership program, because there is a lot of interest for the leadership program. But then when they see, the money or the cost or the investment, to be able to articulate the savings and say, we have that covered. We know that you are a 55-person company. I know I can get you up to 80% back on this subsidy. This is how it works. You're 70% reimbursed upfront, 30% reimbursed on the back end. So once your staff complete the program, to have that confidence and have that conversation with whomever you're trying to sell on that program, whether it's for your own profitability or whether it's for, they're really the gain of the industry. I think it's a double-edged sword, because we're actually at the point where we're selling packages, and then it's like a barrier of like, well, I don't know where to go next. So
yeah, exactly.
And we're like, Shawna is going to hold your hand throughout the process.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for you, Shawna. Oh my God.
And it's also interesting, Linda, because you're approaching builders and you're talking about, this is a brand new service delivery that you're giving them. This is a brand new, line of business that you're giving them. So it's actually, you can access both. You can access the COJG for training their existing people, because their existing people are going to be the supervisors and the lead hands and all that kind of stuff. But then because of what you're bringing into the housing industry and the wellness and the aging industry, we're talking about now a specific skill set that, job seekers now have a whole new employment category that they can be trained on. Right. Yep. So this is something that's so perfect for like a workforce development project, maybe with a grant, because maybe it's how do we take, what skills do we need to take some green people that are interested, maybe someone like me that just looking for a job, but thinking of my parents and them being at home and, and I'm a tradesperson. How can I be a part of this movement and be hired like a laborer or whatever, right? So, this specific project, Linda, is just super exciting. Like, so where you can see like all three, like Agnes and I are always talking about, we're better together. We're better together.
Yeah,
it's not just you over there, you over there. It's how do we come together for the greater good of everybody.
Great.
Well,
and
and right now with the discussions that are happening with the National Building Code, that's changing to incorporate more accessibility. The like I mentioned earlier, the CSA and the Canadian Housing and Mortgage Corporation are moving towards having more accessibility design for standard low rise, because under the building code, accessibility is taken care of when it's commercial or multi-unit and all the bigger spaces, but not residential. And so the problem that we're going to face, and I'm hoping that I will be on that technical committee, is that we don't have those trades to understand. Light switches should be here. The light switches now will be changed to 48 inches off the ground, or plugs will be 24 inches higher off the ground, and zero entry, and grab bar reinforcing the walls for grab bar. A lot of the trades don't know all these little, even though they might have been in the trades for a long time, they don't know all these new things that are going to start coming out. So I can see the opportunity for that job creation and training them so that they've got that skill, so that they are creating better environments, which are growing in demand by the population in Canada.
Absolutely.
Very exciting.
I'm actually going to be putting
contacts in the chat so all of us online can, because I think you've managed to keep all of us here in this conversation.
Yeah, if you actually just copy and paste all of this, these are the links to all those, the Alberta, the BC, the Ontario programs. Shawna's contact is up here. And then Shawna, if you're okay with it, I'm going to put your counterpart for the COJG.
Well, maybe just put me for now, because what I like to do, I like to talk to the employers first and get the groundwork for the application going. So at least when it gets over to her, there's not a lot of back and forth.
Okay, perfect. So everyone, just copy and paste in the group chat. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to be putting this at the end of the YouTube video, so at least you can grab it from there. Okay.
And my last question, are both of you available either in tandem or individually to actually, if I was to organize webinars for the interior designers, decorators, stagers, renovators, contractors, like that kind of target audience for residential, would either or both of you be available to do a webinar in the future, say in 2021?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can actually catch me right now, pre-recorded. I'm at one of the seminars for PCL, Ellis Don, and TCBN. I'm actually hosting a panel discussion, moderating a conversation for diversity and inclusion. So again, a different effort, different approach. I'm literally pre-recorded, so I think I'm actually talking right now in the other session.
Well, it works so well. We did at the Livable Environment Conference. If you go to livablecanada.com, you'll see what I'm talking about. But we had everything pre-recorded, and it was fantastic. It really was. And so I had, we had over 400 trade professionals attend, and now they're asking me to do this again for April. So I've left the original speakers still up, and we're looking for an April April virtual event, but the pre-recording is amazing because it really can, you don't have to deal with all those bandwidth issues, tech issues, and you can be in two places at the same time. So while that's recording, you're here teaching us.
Case
So
in
this is
point,
great.
Exactly.
No,
Yeah,
for sure.
it's great to have them recorded.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
thank you everyone for joining us. I really appreciate it. Again, if you need more information, please get in touch with myself. You can always find me through the YouTube channels and links, or you can find me at nextgenprofessional.com or on LinkedIn. We are very active on LinkedIn. Or you can talk to Shawna directly if you're looking to get your hands on some of those training incentives and programs. If you are looking for other provinces, let's map it out together. Let's keep on top of this conversation and let's get people to know that this is a support network for them.
Love it.
But other than that, I'm going to close off, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for the questions. The questions are amazing. I love this type of
Okay,
conversation.
thanks, Shauna. Thanks, Agnes, and I'll be in
So
touch.
nice to
Linda.
meet everybody.
Laura, let's
Yeah.
be in touch, Laura. All
Yeah, I'll
right?
send you an email right away. Okay, bye.
Thanks. Have a great
Thank you
day.
so
Bye now.
much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.